Hello, welcome to the first devlog of Shanty Town. We're going to be taking a look how I made this from this. But first, what is Shanty Town? I just finished my first game, Kainga Seeds of Civilization, which is a roguelike village builder set in a bizarre land full of surprises. In Kainga you build an entire city, develop a culture and an architectural style. It's pretty in-depth, so this time I wanted to make something smaller scale.
これは鳩ですか?
Kainga is still a pretty great game, and I'll put the link in the description, but this time I had a different plan.
Hope you're working on a plan there. Always. I knew you was gonna say that.
You know those extremely dense city blocks that seem to be built right on top of each other? I've always been fascinated in how they look like they've grown organically over time. I thought it would be fun to play a game where you build something like that. I wanted to have the atmosphere of a modern city combined with a relaxing vibe you could just sink into. I decided to restrict the game to just one city block, where you build using Tetris-like house pieces and then have to hook up water, power, and make sure the door is accessible. So let's get started. Personally, I like to start with camera controls, so I separated the camera from the player character. I created a new actor that will be our camera, and added the necessary components. I put movement controls on the player controller, adding new inputs for turning left and right and zooming in and out. Here's a quick Gamedev tip. Make the camera movement speed increase further the more zoomed out you are. Players don't know they want this, but it feels better. Next, let's work on placing objects. I made a few basic house blocks in Blender. Usually when I make a mechanic, I create 3 at a time, to sample the full variety that the game will have. I made each block spawn a door, 1 to 2 windows, and fill the rest of the space with blank walls. I made 2 types of windows, a single and a double wide, which I know will cause me headaches in the future, but I did it anyways. I made some simple buttons to spawn things, and after a few adjustments, the placement system comes to life.
Wow.
That's easy!
It wasn't that easy, but my experience developing Kainga helped a lot. Next I added a wire placement mechanic using the cable component, a pipe placement system using splines, and another placement system for smaller items like aircon machines. I used the player controller to check pathing to doorways to see if they're accessible. I created a widget that shows which services are connected, and did some tricky collision checking to see if they are. Art is something I'll work on later, but I did make this 4x4 grid of colors and made a material that chooses just one of those. Any number between 0 and 15 can instantly change what a color a building is. We'll be seeing this again later for sure. It's fun to see everything coming together with a bit more color. Now that a lot of mechanics are in place, it's time to create the game. I created some new UI buttons for placing buildings, I added monetary costs for placing items, and when you provide a house with all its services, it will add to your income. You can earn this income 4 times per year before having to pay taxes, which are increased every year. I like this system as it makes a lot of sense, but I don't really like it because it requires a lot of math and it isn't very fun. Nobody enjoys doing taxes after all. So I went back to the drawing board to think of new gameplay ideas. Conceptually, the game is still a good idea, but I need both short and long-term goals. There's a saying in Gamedev that gets thrown around a lot, and that's follow the fun. Placing buildings, pipes, wires, and other things was enjoyable, but not rewarding. I decided to look at some similar games for inspiration. I could lean into placing house pieces and make the game more like a 3D Tetris, where the decorations automatically generate like in Townscaper. Or I could go the other way, and lean into the relaxing vibes, where the game becomes about placing details like unpacking. I decided to go with the latter and came up with a plan.
I had a god plan!
I got rid of all the checklists, and instead I'll be rewarding the player with adjacency bonuses. Each object will get extra or negative points by being next to other specific objects. This system has several benefits. The player has the freedom to place anything anywhere, but I can incentivize placement locations and points. Points generally increase, so there's a constant positive reward stream. Players can also select what they want to place next, which allows for creativity and expression. And look at that, I accidentally made an FPS game. Actually, I like the direction this is going, but it does lack some clarity. It's time to remove the debug lines and put some materials in. Materials are really my boss fights when it comes to game dev, and I've always had trouble with them, so I tend to keep things really simple. Here's my list of what I need right now. I need a transparent material for placing collisions, and I need a material that turns red when placing is impossible. They turned out really similar, so I made them into the same material. Then I did what all game devs eventually do and went down a bit of a programming rabbit hole. For the new wire placement system, I wanted to make multiple wires string across the building from the main wire source, but I also wanted to make it so you would be able to pull wires which have the same dead end middle wire as long as from the middle of the other wire, which will cause one of the other wires to break and make the other wire hollow and less wire to pull from. If you bend the wires like this, then the entire fabric of the universe can collapse into the multiverse of all wires. And voila! It works great. I'm hoping it's these types of details that will make the game really enjoyable. At least that's what I keep telling myself. I think that's a good stopping point for now. So far, it's taken me 4 weeks to get to this point, from the initial idea to here. I hope you'll join me on the next devlog, and we'll work on improving the visuals. Until then, bye!